Hello, my name is Nathan Schauf, and I am the editor of K-Pop Demon Hunters, and welcome to my timeline tour. As you can see right now, I have the entire movie open, and this is kind of what it looks like when it's all done. When the movie first starts out, the movie starts out in individual sequences. And so when we're working on the movie, this is more of what it looks like. The one way that I've always liked to work is a lot of people will name their tracks over here, but it's pretty easy to remember without having a name that A1 through 8 I use as dialogue, 9 through 16 I use as solo sound effects, 17 and 18 are stereo ambient kind of sound effects, 19 through 24 are stereo music tracks. I don't label the tracks because they never really change. In the past, I have put individual character names on tracks to make it easier to see when you cut in, but the problem is on a lot of animated movies, you won't be able to have one character per track, and then the name just gets too big and it gets a little jumbled. So we'll have a spreadsheet or a sticky note on people's monitors to know what track characters are supposed to be cut in on. And we'll relay that information to the sound team. But a lot of characters share tracks because a lot of times characters aren't in the same sequences, so they can share a track. It doesn't always work perfectly, but one thing I always have to do and that everyone always needs to do is to work in sync. And so I have the assistants build in these just, head pops and tail pops. So I know at any time, and I always tell everyone on my team, hey, when you're done with the sequence, always make sure to watch it down, make sure you're still in sync, make sure everything is. Working in sync is an absolute must because with 130,000 some odd frames in this film, if one of these gets out of sync, the entire thing is out of sync. And obviously that can be a problem. I very rarely work in the entire film like this. But when we get to a certain point, when we have a couple months left to go and we're not really storyboarding much anymore and we're more into these other departments, layout, animation, stuff like that, that's when I'll go into Reels and I'll usually work in Reels at that point. But until we get to that point, it's always just sequence based until we build the movie for a screening in storyboard form, then we'll build it out. But I'm very rarely working in the entire movie at once. It's usually only when I have to do a mix or something like that for a screening that I'll have the entire movie up or when we watch it back. The first step is the storyboard phase. And so all the tracks, these are all just storyboards. So if I scroll through here and zoom in, you can see how many individual storyboards we cut together at all different lengths to make the scene work and flow. We will comp them, we will cut them over each other, we will use picture in picture, animate, all types of effects to comp storyboards together to make it flow in the correct way that we need it to flow. Cutting all these little storyboards together with all this temp music or temp sound effects in the orange and then music down here and then other options that I have muted below because especially in a musical we have a lot of different tracks we're trying all the time, so I like to keep other options muted in the timeline in case the directors ever want to go back and listen to something we had before, or if the current one isn't working, or if we like something better. I always like to have the last couple of options muted in the timeline so I don't have to go back and it's easy to do. So again, these are all storyboards cut together very, very quickly. And you can see if I zoom in, how many we'll just go over at a time. So some of these are on screen for as little as 2 frames. Some can be on for over a second. But even right there, that was probably 20 or so storyboards in less than 2 seconds. So it's a lot of very, very quick cuts to make sure that the still images are moving and engaging with the audience as we play. So this is how the movie starts. It's all hand drawn in Photoshop or TV Paint or whatever program the storyboard artist is using. But we will get all these individual drawings, cut them together to make them flow with the sound effects, temp dialogue, and temp sound. And we will do this on a sequence by sequence basis until we have the entire movie storyboarded. And then we cut it all together. And this is how we screen the movie for the first time. It's all just storyboards. And that's how we kind of know, like, hey, is it working? Is it flowing? Is the story good? Is the action good? Do we like the dialogue? It's really the very first attempt to put the entire movie together is all in storyboards. because it's a lot easier to draw storyboards over and over again than it is to animate and do layout and light sequences. Those are very expensive parts of the process. So where a storyboard artist, they can draw panels a lot more quickly than anyone could ever, animate or do layout or do the lighting phase or the effects or anything like that. So this is kind of how it starts in a nutshell. It's very basic, like I said. All the video is all just storyboards on all the layers right now, just with the matte on top. And then we have our dialogue, our effects, and our music cut down. And then once all that's put together and we tie it into one big movie, this is what it looks like in the end. So if we were still just going to watch the storyboard, you can see right here on video one how so much of this is just big, solid black chunks. It's because if we were to zoom in on this, it's the same exact thing you just saw in the other thing. There are so many storyboards that we cut together that when you zoom out from a whole, there's so many cuts that we have to do for every individual storyboard throughout the entire movie that they literally just show up as one big chunk because there are so many storyboards for every single sequence we've done that we've cut together. And you can see these are all converted down to one track because once a sequence is approved out of storyboard, so if we watch part of Soda Pop here, so that's all just storyboards. And then once that's done, we go into this next layer, which is called layout. And this is when they're more in a 3D environment. We have the actual models and we can actually really start to see what the movie's going to look like with the blocking, the characters, and all that kind of stuff. And all that will go above the storyboard layers. This will be the same process as storyboard. A lot of times they'll send numerous and numerous shots of layout. So it won't just be one layer. Before I have all these other departments in, layout can be stacked sometimes up to 10 or 12 even video layers high, depending on how many alt cameras they've given me, how many shots. And especially for this sequence, the choreography was so important to it. We also had live action choreography pictured and pictured on top of it for reference for the animation. So this timeline is not always what it looks like because we work in individual sequences for such a long time that in every department, sometimes we'll have 10 to 12 layers of layout above each other just till we find the right shot, the right camera angle, the right blocking. And then once this is approved and looks like this, and once we're happy with that layout, then it goes to the next department, which is animation. And things can change a lot in animation as well. And so obviously everyone knows what the animation looks like because this is what you see in the movie before it's lit. So usually when we get to animation, this level, usually I'll only cut in 2 versions of animation as we go. And so again, the timeline will be bigger than this because I'll have the previous version of animation on one track and then the new version on the top above that I'll color, that the assistants will color green. So I can look at the timeline and be like, oh, we have new animation for these shots. I'll go back and watch it. And then after it's animated, then it gets, the lighting, the textures, the effects, all that good stuff on top of it, that really looks more like the movie's going to look by the time you see it home or at theaters or wherever you're watching it.
Dork stole one of my pouches!
And so once we have all the layers from all the departments, I love to color code everything. So right here in this sequence, you can see what I like to do is keep the main characters on their specific tracks. So Rumi is all going to be on A1, Mira is going to be on A2, Zoe's going to be on A3, and then Bobby over here is going to be on A4. This way it works really well. This is the same setup when we start. We have all the character dialogue on A1 through 8, and then effects 9 through 16, stereo effects 9, 7, 18, and again, music and everything from 19 through 24. But this helps tremendously because all my assistants will know, like, hey, when we're cutting in dialogue, I can just look at this and be like, okay, because before we record the actors, we just have scratch voices, and those are all a completely different color. Those are usually blue, like over here. This is just scratch voices we had in the movie until we got the actual loop group. So I can look at this sequence and say, okay, all this green stuff is actually production dialogue that is good to use, but we're going to have to record this with loop group on the stage, and the dialogue editor is going to have to cut in new takes for this after the loop group. And so then all of my temp sound effects, all these orange sound effects throughout the entire movie, all this stuff, these are all sound effects that my team and I design as temp sound effects for everything in the movie. So if we go to, let's say, the bathhouse fight, these are all sound effects that we basically designed ourselves from different sound effects library to use as temp, just so when we send it to the sound stage, this is kind of a good idea of what we're going for. So these are all my temp effects. So in animated movies, we go very, very far deep down into temp sound design because we work on these movies for so many years that we don't bring on the supervising sound editors and the mixers and everything until, 6 or 7 months before the end of the movie is when they really start working on it. So organization is also key. So when my assistants send them, they already know that characters have specific tracks, the dialogue is here, sound effects is broken out, music is broken out. So when it goes to the stage, everything's already organized them for in a new way. And this acts as a good blueprint of what the directors like for the sound design. And then when we get the stems back from the sound team, this is more what it looks like. This is all the sound stems from Reel 2 that we get back. And so based on what we have done, they have done all these other layers and all these other effects that we can push and pull from. This is music, sound effects, Foley. This is everything they've done on the stage to make it sound way better than the temp that we did. But again, it's a guideline, so they know what to do, know what the directors are wanting. I love everything to be color coded so I can easily see what everything is. So again, this first layer I know is all storyboards. This is just a crazy amount of the storyboards we had to edit together. And then if you zoom in to the next layer, this will be the layout level to where again we use cameras and blocking and make sure all the characters and the camera moves and the environments are where we want to see them. Then it will go to animation to where the animation will actually animate it. And this is green. And these are all very bright green because these are the latest shots. Again, usually I may stack animation on top of itself so I know the current one, the one before it. And then after that, it goes to lighting, where all the fun stuff, the lighting, the effects, everything you see in the final product is on before it goes to DI. We also have one more step that's not visible in this timeline to where we get it back from the DI and the color conform. And then above this, we just have some built-in mats that tell us where it is, the actual running time of the movie, what shot. This is actually from DI. This isn't from lighting, so we know it's from DI, and what sequence it is. So we have the sequence, the shot number, the name, and all the information that's pertinent to the scene, so we know what it is when we go through. And then we still have some Avid transitions built in on this timeline. Those will be done on the DI stage at some point, and when we get the final conform. Again, this is all just my temp sound effects in here because we don't have the final stems in from the movie yet. But this is more of my working timeline before we finally get all the final stems and the final mixes from the sound stage. And then I can also see color coded here. Anything that's this kind of pink color, this is score from Marcello. So I know that this is just his score. And then I can scroll down, and anytime this lighter, very light kind of pink color, I know that this is one of our songs. And so again, if I zoom out, I can easily look and I can see, all right, there's score, there's one of our songs, everything. So I can just kind of see where everything is based on the color. Now, again, this is the working timeline. And when we have the final timeline of the movie, this is what the final delivery timeline actually will look like. We have 5.1, we have effect stems, we have everything you could possibly want that was turned over to us. We have all the dialogue. We have everything here, and this is what is finally delivered to us with the final picture up here, back from DI in this timeline. So here's one of our sequences. This is the climax when Rumi appears back and she's doing her face off with Guima at the end and she comes in. So this is a really good example, as you can see, how many different storyboards we'll get for one sequence. And we even have all these here at the end for options that I didn't even use. And you can see how many layers and how many different effects and comps and everything we can do on this. This one actually isn't very effect or comp heavy, but this is another good example of how many boards we'll use. We had just gotten the actual song here. You can see in this color, we know this is the final version of the song. Now I know I have this as a guideline that I can edit to this song. This song will not be changing length, so I need to be able to fit everything I'm going to do to this song. And you can see all the different storyboards I have cut in up here to try to make it work, which looks like this.
My voice without the lies, this is what it sounds like.
And that wasn't even the final. We actually, in animation and more in the song, we actually added more parts of that. So one of the hardest things about doing a musical in animation is that the story is always constantly changing. And anytime the story changes, the music has to change with it. So this is actually an earlier version of the song. In the final version, if you remember, we actually pause here for a hug and we extend the song a little bit for that moment. And so it's always very fluid, but you can see, since I have this, I know this was the current version of the song that I had to, but the song constantly evolved. So I constantly had to continue to make changes. And so when you get to the animation stage, you can see that we've already gone through all the storyboards that we had that we just watched. Then we went through previs and layout for all this stuff. And again, once you're in the 3D environment, things change all the time. And now when we get into animation, you can hear the difference that we actually made the song a little longer for this moment when they hug.
By your side. We broke.
So again, everything's constantly changing. In the first thing I just played, we didn't have that extra little time for them to hug, and then we did. So everything's constantly evolving, and you can see how the timeline just gets bigger and bigger as the more departments I go through until we get to the very end, where we have the final. Now you can see all the different layers. We have the storyboards, we have the layout and the previs, we have animation, and we have the final lighting effects and everything like that. Again, this does not have the DI track cut into it, but some of these might be from the DI. So you can see how we went all the way from this all the way to this.
We're shattering the silence. Shouting in the quiet, you're not alone. So we were liars. Dive in the fire and I'll be.
So yeah, lots of constant work, totally evolving. Every time I usually step into a timeline, there's always going to be a change. The only time I probably am not changing anything is just when I'm playing back for something. But anytime I open up a sequence, it's always to cut in a new animation shot, cut in layout. Maybe we got a new version of the song, we got stems, we have new dialogue to cut in. There could be a million reasons why I'm opening it. And so we just have so many versions of the sequence. It goes through so many hundreds of thousands of iterations. It's just constantly evolving until we finally have all these layers and we have all the music and we have all the dialogue and we have everything cut together to make it one big, amazing K-pop experience. And when we're all said and done, this is what we all look like.
Busting demons back to the depths where they belong! Yeah! 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 Yeah!
So that is a brief, very brief idea of what it's like to edit an animated film. As I mentioned, the timeline does not always look this clean. It's not just one layer, one layer, one layer, one layer, and some sound. All these individual departments, storyboards, it can have 10 to 12 layers of storyboards. Layout and previs can have numerous layers. Animation can have numerous layers. So that is a very, very quick overview of what it's like and how many different iterations and how much the timeline can change over the course of a film. I hope you enjoyed K-Pop Demon Hunters and have a great day.